I lead the economic recovery stream. It's nice actually not to be out here in high vis. I led the first response phase out to Herbertville in our well-beings and looking out for people at that first instance, and I came out again to help clean out the campground and head to toe covered in silt and mud. So I've sort of stood in the same mud and silt that you guys have as well. So it's really nice to be out here actually just to chat to you about sort of recovery rather than response. I'm going to be pretty succinct because I think a lot of the detail for yourselves has been around the roading, the rural and the social side of things, and obviously the environment is obviously what's affecting you in your own backyard. But impacts and issues and scale that obviously the economic recovery is looking at, as with some of the sort of the roading reach as well, we're a whole of district impact. Where MPI has been reaching out and obviously looking after that funding stream for the farmers and the farming community, unfortunately it's only been in that fencing aspect rather than trees and horticulture. With the economic reach, we've obviously been looking at those businesses that have had to reach out and have been affected. So it may be your builders, it may be you heard at Berlin, it may be your tourism businesses. It could be many different aspects of the community that may be servicing the rural community. So you may even have your self-employed individuals that are actually sort of coming out, working on farms and suddenly not needed at this moment in time. So how can we support them in this recovery phase? How can we support the needs and the requirements through statistical information to help that funding discussion that Mayor Tracy and others are going to be having with government? And then obviously how do we support and anticipate the scale and what collaboration is required when we're working with other agencies, supporting our businesses, offering a wraparound. We've talked about that social wraparound for individuals, but we've got employers and employees that still have to go home at the end of the day, just like farmers do, and go back to their families. So how do we actually look out for those individuals so they can actually get on with their day-to-day? That's how we're doing that sort of collaboration across social and into the economic environment as well. So I've already touched on that whole statistical area, so I'm going to jump through that one. What are we working on? Well, MD jumped up in the MPI approach and they secured $355,000 for our business community. Now, when we weigh that up against Hawke's Bay, we obviously haven't received the same level of funding that the Hawke's Bay has. They're on much probably $1.5 million that they got for their business support for the first round of funding. This is our only round of funding at the present time, so we're obviously lobbying government quite hard because that fund has now already been exhausted. We're doing a deep dive into our stats. We work with other councils. They have different statistical individuals that do their economic outlooks. And Palmerston North City Council, PNCC, is one of those outfits that we're working with, as well as Accelerate 25, which does that sort of horizons approach, if I can put it that way, for the business community, for the whole of the Manawatu region. We're supporting rural and coastal tourism businesses, as Tony touched on. So we're actually reaching out to all of those tourism companies, whether they're accommodation on farm or whether they're B&Bs in people's backyards and they're doing it as secondary income. How are they doing? Are they getting any trade? If they're affected down closed roads, how are we reaching out to them in that response phase, and then obviously in the recovery phase, how can we continue to support them as they look to open their doors again or continue to trade? So for some of you, you'll have secondary businesses that may be dealing in accommodation. So if you're having problems and we haven't heard from you, reach out to us, tell us what's going on for you, and we'll obviously try and support you accordingly as well. Touching on that social side of things, we're obviously touching into our business community, as I mentioned earlier, with our employers and employees. We've got a chamber event later this week on the 3rd of May down at the Tui Brewery. This is actually a multi-chamber event, so it's ourselves with Danny Burke Chamber and Paihia Business Group coming together for that event, but also Manawatu District Chamber and the Wairarapa Chamber are also coming together. So we're going to look at utilising that event to actually touch with our business community, see how they're doing, offer them the olive branch of support. Some will take it, some will see that it's there and take it in the future. It depends how we're all doing as a community. We're also working on a social well-beings event. So this is actually pulling the trades. Normally people would see that as the construction industry, but it's all trades, whether in engineering, business, our roading community, or even those reaching out to the farming community. Putting them together for equivalents of what we're doing here in Herbertville, a barbecue, a wraparound to actually see what's going on and obviously extend that network of services that are available through iwi, through our health and connections, and through council as a whole. Where are we going in the future? Well, any fund's exhausted. How do we bring in more money, and what kind of money do we need? How are we going to support that through statistical information? We've already done our first snapshot of stats that's looking at what the effect was on our retail trade and out into our farming community, so that we can have a snapshot in time of what happened at Cyclone Gabrielle. We're already working on that next phase of statistics, which is looking at the effect on spend. Because when the Cyclone Gabrielle happened, we saw a spike up in spending, not a spike in decrease in spending, because we're all buying supplies. We're all buying what we need to help us get through that next period, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months. Now we want to see what's actually happening for our business community through spend, so that if the traffic, the road traffic, for instance, going up through to the Hawke's Bay is decreasing, what effect is that going to have on our retail businesses? What effect is that going to happen on our supply chain out to the rural community as well? And can we get the supplies in that you all need in a timely manner? Just in time has been the way that we've always worked, in a sort of local and international approach of the supplies coming in, but in actual fact, just in time has probably created that hole that we're now finding when we're trying to get supplies. So, monitoring import and export, working with the built environments, and obviously that comes back to our roading discussion of how do we get the trucks and trailers out here so that you can actually have general business and usual business happening, and obviously reaching out, as we've spoken about, with the tourism businesses and assessing the need for the future of social wellbeing in our life.